This video discusses the applications of ICTs in the field of law enforcement. Now, if you have watched any kind of crime show, any kind of CSI show, movies where they're trying to solve a crime, you would have already been exposed to many examples of the use of ICTs in the field of law enforcement. So let's get started with traffic control. Computerized traffic light systems can be adjusted depending on the time of day and the flow of traffic. Sometimes there are also sensors to actually detect the flow of traffic. Then we have security cameras. So most individuals, most businesses usually have some kind of security camera, and these cameras can capture footage of a crime in progress, and you would have seen many examples of this in the recent past right here in our own country, where many crimes are being captured on security camera footage. Now, if these cameras were also linked to powerful computer systems, then this data can actually be processed and individuals can actually be identified through computer-assisted facial image identification or facial recognition systems. I'm pretty sure you guys would have seen this in many different TV shows as well. Then we have surveillance. Now we are talking about surveillance by actual law enforcement personnel, not criminals. These are all supposed to be done while trying to protect people, while trying to solve crimes, and so on. So we are saying that surveillance would involve eavesdropping by wiretapping, or basically being able to eavesdrop on your phone calls, interception of email, location information, for example, determining where you are based on calls going to your cell phone, because remember your cell phone would actually connect to certain cell towers, so they actually have an idea of where you might be located. Communications analysis. So for instance, when you use your credit cards or debit cards, it's going to be registered at a certain location, and therefore the police will know that a particular criminal was in that spot in a particular store, maybe using a credit card. The use of computers here for surveillance would be controversial because it can be considered intrusion into people's private lives. However, it usually has to be done in order to combat crime or organized terrorism. So there are many different ways using computers that law enforcement agencies can actually surveil people. Biometric systems identification. So here we have fingerprinting. So it's usual when there's a crime that the law enforcement personnel, the detectives and so on, they come in and they dust for fingerprints. And these fingerprints now would have to be scanned in and compared to a database of known criminals' fingerprints. So that would be the, if there's a match, then we've identified the person who was at that location. However, some persons' fingerprints may not actually be on the database. Sometimes as well, there's a certain percentage error so that it may not actually be the same person's fingerprint. Then we have computer-assisted facial image identification, or basically facial recognition, where based on your features on your face, the computer can identify who you are. Again, this is dependent on having a database of images of persons so that your image can be compared to one on the database to be recognized. Of course, I'm saying your, but we're talking about law enforcement here, so we really mean the criminals. There are other ways of using facial recognition. So, for instance, if skeletal remains are found, then they can do some kind of analysis. So they can scan the shape and features and so on of that skull or skeleton and figure out what the person might have looked like while they were alive in order to identify them. So again, in the field of law enforcement, there are so many ways that computers can be used even beyond what is described in this section.